Hey y'all, welcome back to Breeze Breakdown. I'm so excited. We have a brand new episode today. We have Sidney Madden. She is a music journalist, writer, and host. She's a co founder and co host of NPR's Louder Than a Riot. I love it. I love that podcast so much. And she's also produced and hosted some of NPR's Tiny Desk. Meg the Stallion is one of them. I love how interconnected y'all are. And also, she's previously worked at XXL and MTV News. I'm so excited to have her today.
Thanks, Bree. I'm excited to be here.
It's gonna be so fun. So let's start by you telling me. I know I said a bit about you, but how would you describe yourself in your own words?
Describing myself in my own words, I think first and foremost, I am curious.
Mm-hmm.
I am a storyteller by nature, and as a connection to being a storyteller, you want to learn more and share what you learn. So I'm perpetually hungry, perpetually curious, and always interested in how culture permeates into our larger society.
Mm-hmm.
And as a music lover, I think that is the heartbeat of a culture. So I've been lucky enough to make a career out of being curious and culturally aware and loving music.
Yeah, and you being curious, can you tell me a bit about your career thus far? So how you got into music journalism? Did you want to be a music journalist? Did you want to be a talk show host? What were your aspirations that led you to where you are now?
Well, I definitely grew up working on my school's newspaper. I went to college for journalism. Broadcast journalism was my concentration there. But I have a dance background, so music was always part of my life. I'm also from a Black family, so music was always part of my life. I'm Jamaican, like reggae, dance hall, R&B, jazz was always just around me growing up. And even when I started to get into having my own music taste, I was always reading Vibe and The Source and Rolling Stone and XXL. I grew up in the time of TRL and 106 in Park. So it was very appointment viewing, and you were able to tap in with multiple points of the culture, from fashion to marketing to finance. It was just this whole world that was coming up, and it was just the sound of the time. And I'm talking about hip hop and R&B specifically, but
Mm-hmm.
we all know now that every genre that's come out of America is a black birth genre. I
Mm-hmm.
don't even need to say that. um but I do remember being in college and being told repeatedly that you can't really make a career out of journalism, and you can't expect to make a lot of money
Mm-hmm.
um, in the journalism field and making that your career path, unless you want to be an on-camera host who starts off in like the number 12 market, like somewhere deep in Iowa or
Yeah.
something, and you just work your way up through the TV field that way.
Yeah.
Uh, but then when I was a junior in college, I took an internship at MTV News, and I had some really great intern supervisors and just informal mentors there. And it made me realize that I could forge a path for myself in the journalism field, in the hip hop journalism field,
Mm-hmm.
and just, I guess, the broader entertainment field.
Yeah.
Um, so from there, I definitely hustled. I tried to stay in touch with everybody I'd ever interned with,
Mm-hmm.
every intern supervisor I ever had.
Mm-hmm.
And that led me to, after about of freelancing, eventually getting on staff at XXL magazine, which is just this legacy hip hop magazine. They're known for the freshman cover, which comes out every year and just kind of co-signs 10 up and coming rappers in the field, things like that. It's kind of like a precursor to a larger blowing up in the culture. And I was at XXL for almost 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2017, um, which was coincidentally the year that Nielsen reported that hip hop was the most consumed, most marketed, most profitable genre in America,
Yeah.
which is funny that they reported that in 2017 because working in it prior, like I had always felt like that, you
Yes.
know, but maybe that's my bias, whatever.
No.
And in 2017, yeah, yeah. In 2017, that's when I moved over to NPR Music. And at the time when I was coming over, NPR Music definitely had people in the hip hop space who had written for that publication before.
Mhm.
Um, but as an audio first place in a like historical radio broadcast space, there was not a lot of hip hop representation, especially in a nuanced way that was culturally relevant to people who actually like lived in it and occupied in the culture. It was very like voyeuristic, like zoomed out.
Yeah.
And so I I took that job because I knew it was an opportunity for growth.
Mhm.
Um, as I said, I was coming from a magazine, so I was coming from the print and digital world and then moving into broadcast world.
Yeah.
Um, and I saw opportunities for maximizing my potential in new ways, absolutely, and joining a team that was ready to do that. Because NPR Music at the time, and still pretty, is like a small department, a small team compared to others in the broader NPR apparatus.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, from there, I started as a digital news editor, which means it's my job to edit and digitize music stories that are coming out of Morning Edition and All Things Considered, which are the flagship radio shows at NPR.
Mhm.
But once I got the hang of that, I saw, other ways I could learn the ropes, other ways I could feed my curiosity. And
Mhm.
that came with things like producing Tiny Desk and pushing for more hip hop and R&B at the Tiny Desk.
Mhm.
That came from pitching stories about burgeoning R&B or hip hop artists that would get, you know, a more critical and contextual piece of coverage from me than it would from maybe just somebody who's just a casual fan and just also has a million other things on their plate. Like I made it my job to have a specialty. And
Mhm.
then I should say in 2017, my co-host and co-creator Rodney Carmichael, he also joined NPR Music,
Mhm.
and I think I've said it before publicly, but he was one of the reasons I was like, okay, I can join this team too, because Rodney is a highly lauded hip hop journalism in the southern hip hop space,
Mhm.
and he came up from Atlanta to join the team. And
Mhm.
so from there, like we would always, you know, when you like you the last people in the office and you sit back and you kiki and you get to talk about what you really like to talk about and chop it
Yeah.
up. We
Yeah.
would always be doing that. And that led us to have the epiphany that we could make a podcast about hip hop and socio-political things happening in our world, and draw the tendrils and the connections between the two
Mhm.
and actually explore them with the nuance that these things deserved.
Mhm.
And so from there, we, after many, pilots and green lights and trials and error and staffing and all of that and reporting and editing, we launched the first season of Louder Than a Riot with the tagline Rhyme and Punishment. Thank you. In 2020.
Mhm.
And it was a deep historical and contemporary look about hip hop and the carceral state in America. And then for our second season, we didn't want to harp on that same topic because we didn't want to be feeding the criminalized stereotype of hip hop.
Yeah.
So we flipped the script, and the second season was about hip hop's deep entrenchment and relationship with misogynoir,
Mhm.
which is the misogyny and racism against Black women specifically. And
Mhm.
all of these things were happening, like it was all divine timing, because in 2017, 2018, that was when a lot more people were getting more in tune to like Meek Mill's probation case. And then in 2020, the eruption of um, the Black Lives Matter movement and people starting to have more conversations around prison reform and prison abolition. Like it was right on time with that. And
Mhm.
then in 2023, we've just seen, of course, this beautiful renaissance and tidal wave of women in hip hop dominating the game, dominating the sound and the culture. So it was a look at kind of a reckoning with, why has this never happened before? What are we going to do that makes sure this prosperity can be ensured and long lasting? Yeah. And so that was after, I'm sorry, that was, and then after season two came out, um, there were a bunch of layoffs at NPR, as I'm sure we'll get to talk about the media landscape right now. There's a lot of erosion, a lot of growing pains and adjustments happening. So there were layoffs at NPR in 2023,
Mhm.
and our show was one of the slate of shows that were shuttered, that were canceled from it, mostly because of financial reasons and just the labor and the money that goes into long form reporting. So now I'm still at NPR, and I'm working on reporting from everything that's developing with these Diddy cases,
Yes, I
and
see.
also, yeah, and also shifting to cover this, again, explosion and this. It's not a new scene, but it's just bubbling to the top now of
Yes.
Afro beats, piano, African sounds.
Oh, Tyler. Yeah.
Yes.
Do you have like like obviously like the way that your career evolved was into that podcasting space with Louder Than a Riot? Is there now like layoffs and everything? Do you feel like your career is going to evolve in a different way?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's important to say that, to me, the core of what I do has to be storytelling,
Mm-hmm.
um, has to be uh, deep, thoughtful conversations, questions and answers, things that get to like the real meat of why we're doing what we're doing, why things are happening to us, what are our seeds of love or pain or emancipation or power. Because so much of, I mean, there are quotes that say almost every story is a story about power. And to me, I'm committed to storytelling for my audience, for my like constituents, in the best way possible, no matter what that medium is. Like, as I said, I I interned at places like Viacom and MTV, which is television.
Mm-hmm.
I worked at I worked at magazines and in the digital space, and I've worked at broadcast and audio. And there's always going to be ebbs and flows to our industry,
Yeah.
uh, dictated by a lot of things that are even outside of our control. Things like technology, finances, things about, you know, who's in power in the White House or any political seats that try to denounce the press at the time and just foster this distrust in media over time.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's never, there's this old quote that says the medium is the message. And I think living through some of the ebbs and flows of this industry, I don't always agree with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the medium is the vessel to get the message out that you're trying to tell. And it's always about seeing what is the best fit to meet your audience where they're at, to meet who you're trying to talk to and who you're trying to speak for, and who you're trying to make sure is committed to the history books, um, where they're consuming news, where they're trying to be thoughtful, where they're trying to dig deeper, and find that's how you can find your audience, and that's how you can find where your message needs to be going. Yeah, I still definitely believe in all of the journalistic integrity tent poles
Mm-hmm.
of of the space of media and journalism. Um, it can be difficult to hold on to those virtues when a gossip space or a media personality, their message might go farther in the moment.
Yeah.
But I'm always really committed to just providing people with a historical ledger that makes sense, that is, respectful to us, and has
Mm-hmm.
the nuance and the high caliber of journalism that, like, I always grew up on and I really respected.
Yeah, I feel like the idea of integrity within journalism is always. I feel like people go back and forth. Like, I
Yeah.
never, I never want to be like publicly specific, but I think it's always interesting. People are always like, well, we as a community, we need to have smarter and forward thinking conversations. But the things that are always popular, no matter the medium, like you said, always winds up being the thing that is, for lack of a better word, dismissive of the culture. I think, and like not as a. I think it's very, and when I say the word dismissive, I think it's dismissive of the growth that we are trying to work towards, especially like
Mm,
I feel like Louder Than a Riot is so cool because I was listening to the DJ Drama episode about the evolution of a mixtape, and then also the episode about Megan Thee Stallion and Tory Lanez and how y'all were like
hmm.
everybody wants to talk about misogynoir. That's the word of the moment. And the woman who coined the term was like, I hope one day that we can retire that word.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think I think
The
it's
whole point of naming it is to identify it so that you can render it obsolete, like
yeah
so that we can know to stop doing these things that hurt each other or hurt
yeah
ourselves.
hurt
Yeah.
ourselves. And then when we have like I just really love that episode, especially how y'all were saying how when we talk about misogynoir, when we talk about women in the industry, we specifically Black women in the industry, we're quick to. How do I want to word this? I don't want to miss. Basically, I really love that episode because I think a lot of the times we talk about how we want to protect Black women, how Black women do this, that, and third. But when it's time to actually do that, people are so
Do
quick
it.
to dismissive and people are quick to discredit. I loved, and I also loved when your co-host was like, "It's important to mention that Tory Lane's defense attorney is a white man." Just so you know, I
Yeah.
I just love that episode a lot, but I don't want to delve
Thank you.
too deep into it. Okay. Outside of that, are there ways that you feel like you've progressed in your career outside of NPR specifically?
Have I progressed? Yeah, absolutely. I think outside of any job or any career that we have, we working in media and working in, I'll say working in Black media, working in Black women's media, it obviously requires an emotional labor of us
Mm-hmm.
because it's part of our identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
I I am very proud of the vantage point I have. I am proud of the privilege of being a Black woman and telling Black stories. Um, and I wouldn't change that. I've worked hard to get to this point, but at the same time, there are metrics of success that I hold dear to me that have nothing to do with my online persona or the stories that I put out for people, um, or nothing outward about me. I think so much of so much of our as the workforce. Let me start over. As as the workforce has become a more visible part of people's identity, I feel like it can get conflated and you can lose your actual self um, in the job, in the work, in the perception of your work, in the consumption of your work. Things are really, the scale of success is very askewed now.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like for me, truly, I I've learned to separate a lot of the things I hold dear and a lot of my identity away from what some of the work that I do. Because at the end of the day, like we're what we do, I feel is important, but it's not all that we do. There are moments when I'm just trying to tap into my childlike curiosity, and my child at 5 years old, even though I was curious, I was not crusading to talk about um, how this whole music industry is turning a blind eye to Diddy's indiscretions as all of these cases run out, because that's heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can take our work serious, but we also need to take our self-care and our
Mm-hmm.
mental health serious. And sometimes that means stepping away from the work. I definitely used to get called a workaholic by my friends and stuff. I've started to like pull away more from that because there there are some things at the end of the day that feed your soul that have nothing to do with work. I think about third spaces that I try to tap in with and occupy. Things like Envision.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's fostering the next generation of um, women and femmes in this space. I don't see that as a part of work, though.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I see that as a part of community enrichment that ensures that there will be great thinkers coming after me, adding to the canon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I, I, like I said, I have a dance background. I still try to take dance classes, fitness classes that have nothing to do with my job. And it's literally just for the pursuit of health and fun. I was asked recently, like, what are your antidotes for a bad day? And I'm like, a FaceTime call with my girls, like a soul nourishing 2-3 hour FaceTime, or better yet, a girl's trip,
Mm-hmm.
or just a talk with your family members, something that grounds you in who you are outside of what you contribute to your field of work, or to even just your people's outward perception of you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you have so you spoke to like whether it be a FaceTime with your girls. I love a good dinner moment where we sit and eat. I love that.
Yes.
Um when did you feel like you started to make that shift? Because I feel like that takes a long as someone who has been who knows it and I feel like is going through it. When did you feel like that shift occurred? Did you feel like it was when you turned a certain age or maybe like you didn't get something in your career that you really wanted?
That's a good question. And so much of these things that we try to do for ourselves, they are works in progress.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll say, like, I'm still shifting,
Mm-hmm.
because there are times when, because of the nature of my job, I do just have to get called away and I have to be in work mode um, when I'm trying to just be on some family and friends time.
Mm-hmm.
Breaking news moments, obituaries,
Mm-hmm.
uh, unearthed court documents, like these are all things that necessitate that require your attention in the moment. I will say, i think I think the pandemic had a lot to do with it for me.
Mm-hmm.
um we were very entrenched in the work we were doing with season 1 of Louder Than a Riot, and like I said, it came out in 2020. But I do, because everyone was separated and inside, and your workspace was also your home space and your workout space and your familial space. People's priorities of self-care changed a lot. I know mine did a lot, and it just became a bigger priority to me. I will say, when I was at other jobs and I was younger and I was someone who was on kind of an entry level of the team, you have this like this need to prove yourself and put in those 10,000 hours and be available. And sometimes toxic work cultures actually dictate that like you're the youngest in the rung, so you got to be up on the late night, you got to do these releases, you got to do this breaking news. But I remember really hard times in my early 20s when I did feel like my entire identity was the job and the career I was working towards.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, it has to be a conscious effort. I don't think it ends. I don't think it's like you grind in your 20s to shine in your 30s, because we're all on different paths. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
somebody will be grinding up until their 50s and
Mm-hmm.
won't get the recognition until they hit 61. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So I think it is always a balance. I think you should push relentlessly in the direction of your dreams and your pursuits, but also not forget yourself in the moment. In those moments when it feels like that is all you are and that's all you have to contribute to this world. Because no, we are multifaceted. We exist in multitudes. We should respect and nurture all of those multitudes.
Mhm.
And so for me, a, a a silver lining of the pandemic was really just getting in touch with myself more on that level and catering to my childlike joy, catering to my mental health in a new way,
Mhm.
and one that is separate from any metric of success associated with what I do for work.
Yeah, and I love that for two reasons. The first being I was just talking because I just celebrated a birthday last week, and someone was like,
Okay. Happy birthday, Aries season.
yes, I love being an Aries. But it was so funny because my brother's wife was like, "Are you excited? Like, how do you feel about getting older?" I was like, "I'm excited. I'm tired of being the youngest person in the room." Like I feel like obviously with age comes wisdom and all that stuff, but I feel like so much of my early 20s was about me like being the last one in the office or working hard or like putting up with like a lot of stuff that as you get older you realize you don't have to, or like you can ask, like you just feel comfortable in those spaces. And another thing that I really like that you said, I was just telling my friend, I just really do hate the narrative of like you grinding in your 20s just so you can like be successful in your 30s. I understand
Yeah.
where people are coming from with that, but that can lead you into really bad burnout and running yourself into the ground. And then also, I just have a hard time believing, depending on your career, those 10 years are going to define the rest of your life, right? Like, what happened? I know for me, when I was like 16 or so, I really wanted to be a lawyer. So I interned at a law firm and I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, you can put all that work into something and then realize you don't want to do it. And I think when you have that mentality, it's harder to come to terms with the idea of pivoting. And pivoting is so important. Which segues me into my next question for you. In what ways do you feel like you've pivoted in your career, specifically in ways that you least expected?
I feel like I've pivoted a few different ways in my career that maybe from an outside perspective wouldn't seem as drastic, but to me, they're very intrinsic and innate. Like at the top of this conversation, I said, I'm curious, I'm a storyteller. I never expected when I first started working at NPR, or even let me backtrack before then, I never expected to move from a magazine and a digital space to a radio broadcast space.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I grew up listening to radio like passively, but I never saw it as my news source of choice per se, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then when I got even more training in it, I got training in it in college, but then when I got even, more training by doing on the job here, I really came to enjoy and respect the intimacy of an audio conversation, especially in a increasingly visual and like visually saturated world.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people will say to you, I had such a good conversation. I'm so glad this wasn't televised or this wasn't taped, because then you have a whole different, as an interviewee and an interviewer, you have a whole bunch of different considerations to think about,
Mm-hmm.
right? um, I think there is a level of honesty and humility that people bring, or that people let themselves have in an audio space that isn't always available in a visual space. I think in a written space, it can even be even more heightened, but you still, like, audio is a sweet spot because you get the intonations and you get the emotion in the words,
Mm-hmm.
and you can just visualize the story yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But when I first started, I wasn't really thinking audio would be a goal. Um, and then when I saw what I could do with audio, and I saw a path or an opportunity to bring more hip hop and R&B to Tiny Desk, I never saw myself as a producer or an event coordinator or a booker in that way.
Mhm.
Um, but again, I was just curious and I wanted to make moments for us, you know, like I wanted I wanted to showcase Megan Thee Stallion with a backing band.
Yeah.
I wanted to like be responsible for Georgia Smith's first, you know, acoustic US setting. Like I just knew I knew we would want it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
People sometimes ask me who my audience is and I'm like, I am my audience. Like my cousins are my audience, my girls are my audience. Like
Mhm.
I'm really working to make a canon of journalism and criticism and nuance that we have that feel like speaks to us and we have to look back on and build on.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like when I first started out in the professional music journalism world, I didn't feel as many I didn't feel as many like black women in the space, and I definitely didn't feel camaraderie or community in it.
Mhm.
And now looking on like 8 years later, I feel so much more. And that makes me so happy.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is an aside. But yeah, and then even working on Reels. So we've done a few video series at NPR that have been like YouTube mini docs or been real series on NPR Music and NPR's Instagram. I never originally saw myself as like a host in
Mhm.
that sense, but
Mhm.
I grew to really like it because it's a mode of storytelling that feels personal, that feels also connected, and then it can be quick and you got to learn how to convey your message very quick. So
Mhm.
to me, I really just love, again, I love being a storyteller.
Mhm.
I love to learn new ways to tell stories too.
Yeah.
And just being perpetually curious about not only the stories but new ways to tell them. That's kept me very present and urgent in the space, even as it changes. Because as I said, there is there is a lot of change happening. There's a lot of adjustments happening in the media field, in the journalism field right now.
Yeah.
But I think in order to like weather that or adjust or pivot,
Mhm.
you have to be open to new vessels, new engines of storytelling.
Mhm. And I feel like you're definitely achieving all of like you said, curiosity is your main, so that's your North Star. And I feel like you're definitely achieving that through the mediums that you're going through, even though, like you said, it may not be what you most expected. Um,
Thanks, friend.
I wanted to talk
I'm trying.
well, because the reason why I say that and I resonate with it is because that's how I feel like my life is evolving, and I think we're in the same spaces. So I think that's why there's a parallel there. I want to talk a bit about community and what that means
Hmm.
to you. So can you tell me how community has helped you and like how it has shaped your experience thus far, specifically your career, I guess.
In a professional sense, I think a referral is a revolutionary act. Dead ass. I feel there's so many opportunities that would have just been a pipe dream for me if I was not referred or co-signed or like pulled up.
Mhm.
It's one thing to say somebody's name in a room. It's a different thing to push for that name to
Mhm.
get that byline. And it's a whole other thing to be like, here's their contact, hit them up right now. I will connect you on email. Let's get this booking, you know?
Mhm.
Um, because it is an industry based on connections.
Yeah.
You can definitely have stuff based on your merit. um I know it is increasingly becoming a space where you need to push and promote your work a lot more.
Yeah.
I'm not as social media savvy or like quippy as maybe I could be, so sometimes I don't push my work like that.
Mhm.
But someone seeing your potential and tapping into it and being like, come here,
Mhm.
come do this
Mhm.
is a revolutionary thing.
Yeah.
So I can give you an example. It was 5 years ago that Solange dropped When I Get Home. And
I just read this
it was,
article you did. Sorry.
oh, where?
No, I like. No,
Thanks,
I
friend.
no girl.
Thank you.
Sorry, I don't mean to.
I saw it was the anniversary and I was like, wow, 5 years. Time is crazy. But I literally remember that was okay. Let me back up. Again, in this industry, like I said, when I first started out, I did not feel a lot of community and camaraderie. And I've spoken about this before. Hip hop journalism is still very male dominated.
Yes,
Still.
I wanted to talk to you about that, but continue.
Yes. Yes. And so, and this is not shade to any of my former coworkers or anything, because we're all living under this competition and this like capitalist, like, yeah. But I remember I had started working at NPR Music for only a few months, and I was pitching stuff. I had gotten a few big hits. I did this piece about Cardi B's marketing genius, and it dropped when it coincided with her debut album. I had gotten like a few good points on the board, right? And as I said, Rodney Carmichael, he had started working a little bit there before me. And Rodney is the Southern hip hop, he was the expert there. Yes. And so some of the editors wanted to send Rodney to go cover that album. And Rodney was like, without hesitation, was like, nah, send Sidney. And real talk, like, and it was a big opportunity because it's a big album. Solange is a big name. Yeah. This was going to be, a tight turnaround on a review. But Rodney, he got to know me. He got to know me and he respected the pen. And also he was like, I can't do this right now. Yeah. So, but instead of I can't do this, find somebody else. He was like, I found your solution right here. It is the new person you just hired. It is the young Black woman who feels a connection to Solange and who's feeling this album and who's trying to grab, the social connections to it. Send her. He was like literally without hesitation. And so they did it. They sent me, and it was honestly just like a light bulb moment for me. I'm like, that's really what the power of a cosign can do. And it was a great reporting trip. It was a very fast 48 hours in Houston. It was amazing. I was running all over that city. I looked back on that piece a few days ago. I'm like, I interviewed Metro Boomin, Bun B, Abra, and then I was thinking back too. I was like, I actually also interviewed Paul Wall. I interviewed this person at some third world barbecue spot. Like I was running. I was once you're presented with that opportunity, it is all on you to get it, you know, and to bring to the table what you can uniquely bring to the table, your voice, your point of view, your reporting chops, all of that. Yeah. And so I attended the interview. I was supposed to get an interview with Solange, but then it fell through. So me and one of my homies were like, okay, what do you want to do for the night? We ended up at the same strip club as Solange and her crew. And it was just amazing to see her. Also, this was before Megan Thee Stallion blew up. So they were like blasting Megan Thee Stallion there. And I was like, yo, Megan's up next. Like, look at this response, you know? Anyway, but yeah, it's like, that's what the power of a cosign can do. And I don't know if I said this before, but I've done MTV was one internship. I did a lot of internships where you're treated like definitely like lowest rung. You're treated as the help a lot of times. There's microaggressions and social dynamics of being a young Black intern in there, being a young Black woman in the space that are definitely at play. And intern entry level where you can doubt yourself and you can feel very disempowered. And I knew once I moved out of that, like that season of being entry level, like I never wanted to have somebody feel like that. And so as much as I can, I'm like shouting out younger people. I'm passing by lines. If somebody asked me for me to speak in a meeting and I know it was really the person who's like entry level who who really have the sauce to make it happen and give it a point of view. I'm like, here you go.
Mm-hmm.
Here's you who you need to be talking to.
Mm-hmm.
I often, sometimes when I get pitched ideas or I get approached to do things like interviews or hosting, and it's not in my capacity or my bandwidth to do it, I literally send a name of who could do it instead. Because what you don't want to do is have them just like move all the way out, have the person who's trying to book like move all the way out of the pool, you
Yeah.
know? Um, Community, again, as I've started to put out more work and my voice has become more of a signature to me, I found more and more community of people who are trying to do that nuance reporting. So people like Evie Ayani, Shamira Ibrahim, Clarissa Brooks, Heran Mamo, um, Taylor Crumpton, um, Jewel Wicker. Like these are all young, incisive, burgeoning Black women who are, again, adding to the canon
Mm-hmm.
in ways that I feel like we're going to have a legacy to look back on, because it's not just about saying it one time and like blowing a whistle and being categorized in some way about your journalism. It's literally about having a conversation that can foster a cultural change.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the people I've named and many more, like it's not just women doing it. There are people like Andre G at Rolling Stone, Dylan Green with Real Notes, Rodney Carmichael, who again he's he's I guess like technically above my generation, but I found so much community with him. He's
Mm-hmm.
never hesitated to introduce me to anybody that I'm looking for. Um, these are the people that I feel like are going to be pushing the conversation into a new place. And again, we talked about how the media space is so saturated. And yes, there will be more voices and loudmouths with a microphone and media personalities. But if you're really looking to work on something with depth and meat and nuance, like I'm glad that what I do and a lot of the contemporaries that I just named, like we're creating the citations right now. We're doing the labor to create the legacy so that we won't have to talk about, maybe hopefully in 10, 15, 20 years we won't even be needing to talk about misogynoir. It will be obsolete,
Yeah.
you know. Hopefully in 30, 40 years we won't need it. Won't need to be talking about how to reform systems. They'll just already be abolished, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah. Now, you talk about the new girls coming up and like how you're always reaching back, trying to help. Who are some of, I know you mentioned Rodney, who are some of the women mentors that you've had throughout your career? Or felt they may not have been formal, but you felt like they were mentors? Mentors.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So when I think about mentorship, um, to me, it has never been a formal
Mm-hmm.
organization or it's never been a kind of like first date, hit it off type of thing, which I know there are many organizations and many collectives that do that and match you up based on your skills. But to me, it has always come down to real, recognizing real and reaching out like that. I don't know that I've ever had a like formal quote unquote mentor on paper in that way.
Mm-hmm.
I have had informal relationships and communication and people I can hit for advice. And I'm very lucky to even have that because like I said, when I first entered the music journalism space, it felt very competitive. It felt dog eat dog at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like I said, it was keeping in touch with people who were my first intern supervisors that even landed me some of the jobs that I got along the way. So Dara Adeo, who is now not even in the journalism field. She's in psychology and psychiatry, and she has a pretty big TikTok following. She's a published author. Her whole message is about self care for Black women. I highly recommend reading her books or just following her on TikTok because she's hilarious. She was my intern supervisor when I interned at Cosmopolitan magazine, and then
Mm.
she became the managing editor of XXL, and
Uh,
it was me staying connected with her because that's the thing. People, there are some people that are stay at the same job forever in the same position, or they move up wherever and they hit that ceiling and they're cool and they're comfortable, but a lot of people do move around.
yeah.
So it's not about staying loyal to whatever specific publication or company. It's about staying loyal and connected to the people who recognize you and
Yes.
recognize your talent and your vision, and who you see it in yourself, like who's the mirror there. So Dara was a huge advocate for me. She helped me get that position at Double XL. And then even before that, my one of my intern supervisors, she wasn't my supervisor again formally, but she's someone who saw something in me and she would give me bylines.
Hmm.
That's Nadeska Alexis, who is now at Apple Music.
Yes.
But when I first met her, she was the managing editor of the hip hop vertical at MTV News.
Hmm.
um, I think in NPR, again, there's been times when I've been matched up with people, and I'm down to do that because I'm always down to build my network. But it's really more about like who's real, recognizing real in this moment.
Hmm.
And for me, that was Audie Cornish, who is the former co-host of All Things Considered, who now works at CNN and has her own podcast, and again is very much on the same wavelength of me when it comes to building out conversations that are nuanced and get into the weeds of this human experience we're feeling beyond the headlines.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so those are some mentors that I won't say I've had formally, but I can say I can definitely hit them up if I need to,
Hmm.
and I can feel like I can get a piece of advice, or I can get, if I need a recommendation for something, I feel like those are people who I have in my corner. Also, I should say Rodney Carmichael, he I'm gonna keep saying his name because he was one of the first people to I recognize, like, to give me a chance at something,
Yep.
to realize my vision, to realize what I bring to the table, and to be in an advocacy space and really push it there. Yeah.
Okay. I love that. And then obviously Envision is a space for young girls early in their careers trying to forge their path. Do you have any like specific piece or pieces of advice you think that would really benefit the girls and women who come to invest and like subscribe to our content?
A piece of advice for what?
I'm sorry, a piece of advice for young girls who want to have a career like yours or trying to decipher how to go about music journalism.
I would say, and I think Gen Z and younger is doing a really great job of this already.
Mm-hmm.
Divest from the idea of a dream job.
Mm-hmm.
Think about what your core values are. Think about what you love to do. Think about your virtues that you want to bring in the space, the politics that you want to live, not just in rhetoric, but in action, in doing or making what you do. And work from there. Don't think about I want to be the editor in chief of X, because again, this media space is so tumultuous.
So
You
fickle.
might That might not even exist by the time you get into position to become an editor in chief of anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Especially in the way that you may think it is.
exactly, exactly. And then what if you get there and you're at the top of the mountain and you've broken all these ceilings and all you have is just like these cuts and bruises, and you're at the top of the mountain and it's not what you thought it would be. I
Mm-hmm.
would definitely say, like, divest from the idea of having a dream job. Think about what are your core values, your core motivations. Like for me, it's going to be curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
So I I'm not beholden to one specific publication, because you can get inside that publication and realize, like, the grass is definitely not greener. There's a lot of politics. Um, there's a lot of bickering and competition that happens for people to stay in these positions of power. Um, and there, I forget who said it, but it's like, you're only as good as your last byline. I
Mm-hmm.
would add on to that, like, your byline needs to be up to your standards. Like, make everything you put out, like, you want to make yourself proud and
Mm-hmm.
yourself satisfied with it before anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
There are collaborations and constellations that happen just like in the editing process and stuff, but make sure you feel proud of what you're putting in this world, the stories you're contributing, and that you can stand by everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think, again, in an increasingly visible and tumultuous industry, you're going to be known by your work,
Yep.
not necessarily like the place you're working
Mm-hmm.
at. And I love how more and more people are creating their own platforms, things like Breeze Breakdown. Like, you can have a place to hone your voice and your point of view and what you bring to the media landscape. I love that more and more people are doing that. So yeah, don't worry about trying to become VP of content at blah, 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 or editor in chief of XYZ,
Mm-hmm.
because you're just going to be running yourself to the ground to get to that finish line. And then it might not even feel like what you thought it would once you get there, or if you get there.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid to position yourself in places you wouldn't naturally see yourself. So say you you're in the journalism field, but then something opens up in the booking space, the production space,
Mm-hmm.
um, or something opens in music partnerships somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
or you can think about working on documentaries that have a music angle and a music slant, but aren't like the thesis of what is being explored. Like, a storyteller is gonna, you're gonna create no matter where you're at. So I would say hone those skills versus like being so one track mind and so eagle eyed on one specific place to work at, because this industry will definitely take you in places you never knew, you never thought.
Never even expected. With my last job, I like never thought I would do something in the international space, and then I was like flying to Italy for a music fest. I'm like, what is going on? But then
Yes.
you realize, wait, maybe I'm dreaming too small. So I
Yes.
1000% am with you. My last question for you is, who are some artists that you're listening to?
Some artists that I'm listening to.
Mhm.
Um, well, when is this gonna come out?
Um, April. Yeah, mid-April.
Okay. Let me think. I'm very excited. As I said, I'm very excited for this new era and this new chapter
Mhm.
of African sounds
Yes.
just taking hold of the US, whether it's Amapiano or Cueto or Afro beats or whatever it is.
Mhm.
So that Tyler album, I'm
Yes.
very impressed with. Um,
Same.
yeah, I did an interview with her recently, and like, I see the star, I see the pop princessness, I see
I
the star power there.
I saw it too, and I once we get off, I want to tell you something too. Yeah, I see it too.
Okay, fire. But yes, I'm glad we locked in. Um, Other than that, I run a curation space and a community space called Heat Check, which is always about digging for music. I am a big proponent of human created curation, like away from algorithms. I
Yes.
know technology is always going to be a part of our lives at this point, but I'm
Mhm.
very much, I love a recommendation from a human being who
Yes.
knows like what I'm into.
Mhm.
So some new artists I'm listening to are Friday, are Sad Boy.
Mhm.
Flo Millie just dropped
Yes.
her
She
third
said
album. I'm
you
very
can
into
say.
that.
Yeah. I love
Yes.
the name of the album or mixtape.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
she's
know. I
hilarious.
know. Yeah. Other than that, I like the I like the crew Men I Trust.
Mhm.
I'm into Jordan Ward. I'm very into Cleo Soul, also someone who's dropped a lot of projects in succession. Um, and yeah, I'm Beehive all day. I don't
Right.
make
And you're right.
I never hide that. So
Cowboy Carter
I'm a,
is
I'm
coming
gonna
up.
be I'm gonna be two-stepping that Cowboy Carter
I'm also
indubitably.
I was talking to one of my friends about a Kalani drop, and we're like Kalani drop, and I'm like, I wonder if that's gonna be around the same time. But that's a conversation for another day. I wanted to say thank you so much, Sydney, for coming
Thank
on.
you.
I really appreciate you, and thank you so much. I feel like I know you said you're not big on social, but where can the girls find you? On Instagram.
Oh, I meant like I'm not as quick and whip smart as some of these people on social. I'm on there. I'm definitely on there. You can find me everywhere, whether it's on Geneva, Discord, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. It's Sid Madden. SID_MADDEN.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Later, Bree.
Bye. Okay.